Okay. Okay, everyone, we're about to start our broadcast. Let's make sure that we can hear our participants. Rudy and Rigo, can you say hello?
Buddy.
All right, awesome. We have with us Rigo Rios and Rudy Arredondo. Rudy Arredondo is the president of the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers Trade Association. Rigo Rios is the business development director for the organization. They have been instrumental in helping us get this far with the project. I first met Rudy last year in Baltimore. He was our guest at the national conference when we were working on entrepreneurship initiatives for the organization. And one of the things that came out was the organization's need for technology in the farm. And how can we partner with an organization like theirs to make sure that we are servicing our community that is in rural areas throughout the country. So over the year, this hackathon was also developing, and it was the perfect opportunity to marry the two initiatives or the two ideas and come up with something that works for everyone. So with no further ado, Rudy, if you can say hello, introduce yourself, and then Rigo, you can do the same.
Good morning, everybody. I think it's morning there. This is Rudy Arredondo with the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers Trade Association, and it was a pleasure to meet probably a bunch of you in Baltimore last year, and it's a pleasure to be with you, and we are very excited about being able to connect with folks who have a grasp on this ever-changing technology. It affects or our ability to work together with you on some of the technology aspects of farming and ranching.
Thank you, Rudy. Rigo, welcome again.
Hi, my name is Rigo Rios from California, and like Francesca said, I am the Vice President of New Business and Development for the National Latinos Farmers and Ranchers, also a California farmer for over 20 years in table grapes, citrus, and stone fruit, peaches, plums, and nectarines. And I'm actually excited that we are talking about technology in this industry, but not so much on all the other type of technology. For instance, if it's conservation and other areas on precision agriculture, which is a need, but so much getting a little bit more detailed into what I consider a big resource that we need, which is the manpower and the people that help us become successful in this industry.
Thank you, thank you. So you understand, and I'm gonna try to show you the room where we are. Not everybody is here. Remember, this is part of our national conference. There's workshops and job interviews and all kinds of things going on. But I'm gonna, without losing connection, I'm gonna be ambitious here and flip this over so that you can see what's happening. So there's a room full of people that can see you in the big screen, and they're going to be asking questions. They're working on solutions. There are developers, and they are working on, as you guys know already, because we talked about this gazillion times, but they are working on solutions that will help monitor or improve the monitoring of the health of farm workers. So some of them have relatives that are farmers, some might have had some exposure to agriculture, but for the most part, these individuals are needing your expertise as people who breathe and live farm life. So they will ask questions. I will probably voice it over the mic so that it's recorded and they can hear it better. And then you guys will do your best to provide subject matter expertise so that they take that as they're continuing to develop their solutions. That's the plan. Good to go?
Good.
All right, perfect. So no specific order. If you have questions, this is the time to bring it up to these individuals. So yes. Yes, sir. No, I'll speak it into, I mean, I guess you can come up to the mic. That's an option.
Just because I was close.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you hear me?
They can.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so one of our questions is, how far are farm workers away from each other and away from the crew leader at any time during the workday?
It depends on the type of work that is being performed, but there is occasions where it could be up to a quarter mile away.
Okay.
Maybe even a little bit farther if maybe farther if they're doing a specific type of job. For instance, if they are operating a tractor and they're spraying, they can be off miles away by themselves.
Okay. Okay. And that is from the crew leader.
Yeah, well, in that case, it would be a supervisor, but yeah, from the crew leader, if it's a 20-man crew, let's just use that number. They could be up to a quarter mile away,
And the
not
average
a little bit farther.
Okay, and the average is around a 20-man crew. Is that the?
That's typically it is 20 people, men and women, and we have seen it drop just due to other issues, labor issues.
Okay. Okay. So 20 men, women average, 20 men, women average, and the farthest would be a mile in extreme cases. That they're
In extreme cases, a mile, but it's typical to be up to a quarter mile.
That's the average.
And then closer from there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. And
They can be up to a quarter mile.
Okay. Okay, perfect. The last question that I have for you is, could you elaborate a little bit more on precision agriculture? You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, precision agriculture is, for instance, drip irrigation, and for a natural resource like in California or anywhere else where water is an issue, we're down to gallons per minute, measuring, watching how much the usage we are, and we're using pressure compensated emitters for every tree, vine, or plant, and that's very precise. Also, precision agriculture with GPS location on specific equipment that's being used to either harvest wheat or grains, also in spraying, fertilization, chemigation. It's all very precise now, as opposed to maybe 20 years ago, we would fill tanks up and just blow it in the wind. Now there's electrostatic technology that's being used to draw in that product right to the zone that we would want it to be striking or hitting. Precision agriculture, it's a very wide term, but it's really just to monitor everything that we are using with today's regulation that we're having to prepare for coming up in the future with nitrogen percolation into the water. We have to be able to monitor our root zones as well. So we have moisture sensors that go down X amount of feet where your root zone is. Anything past that, then you're just leaching into the groundwater, creating contamination in some cases.
Okay.
That's precision agriculture.
Okay, so it seems like there's already this movement of technology advancing into the field of agriculture, and that you already have some experience with sensors and collecting information and analyzing information. Okay, that's very good. Well, thank you so much for answering our questions. This is very useful indeed. Thank you. That's all I have for you.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sure.
All right. Question for you about kind of your morning meetings. I understand you'll have a crew leader that will talk to 20 or so workers and kind of go over some different safety guidelines or kind of the plan for the day, and kind of just wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about what that looks like and what types of information is shared, or maybe what types of forms are filled out that we could maybe think about, you know, digitizing or making that process easier or more efficient.
Okay. Either a grower and also a large company, or it could be a independent agent that's hired, or an FLC farm labor contractor who provides labor. There are the abbreviation is IIPPs. Well, I just slipped my mind, but it's there's standard operating procedures that we need to that we have to monitor and do a checkoff list. So people come in the morning, and we wait till, let's say the start time is 7 a.m. We'll wait till about 7:05. People show up, we get a head count, and then we'll just, the crew leader will be responsible of just giving out some basic information that's already written out and given to the crew leaders to go down a checkoff list and speak on specific items, topics, and that could be anything from food safety, depending on where they're working at, washing hands, because we are dealing with food, and also just employee health and taking care of their well-being themselves, where they need to be responsible for themselves. And if they're feeling, in this case, heat illness, which is a big topic, and there's been there's been death because of it, and just some protocol that they should be aware of. They should notify if they're feeling sick to their stomach, if they're feeling dizzy, sweating profusely, shortness of breath, where they will come out and speak to the crew leader on any one of those illnesses. If they twist and sprain an ankle, hurt their back, things that they should come out and notify the crew leader. Also, one of the something that also is part of this checkoff list is they have to know where they are working on that particular day. So the nearest cross streets, they have to know what the closest service area is, because we are in rural communities, and in some cases the nearest emergency response could be 15, 20 miles away. They need to know where that location is. Also, there needs to be a phone readily available for a 911 response. That's information that the employees need to know. Also, there's the buddy system. That's probably the best way of anyone really being able to check up and verify on each other is they could be teamed up with someone, and they'll ask, or they'll say, if you can be responsible for him or her, and if you notice something changing, their demeanor or even their speech, if it's slurred, notify the ask them if they're fine, notify the crew leader if there is something wrong. The crew leaders have to have first aid and CPR certification. Those are all mandatory by law, state law, California OSHA or OSHA nationally. Those are all things that need to be explained daily. Also, the crew leader is responsible for asking the grower or the farm manager of what particular pesticides have been used, when was the last date of use, when is a re-entry time for that particular pesticide, and then the liability and responsibility ultimately is with the grower, where they are not to allow anyone into that field until the allotted time has passed for re-entry. All that information needs to be prior to sending anyone into the work area, and all the employees need to understand that information. 3 days ago, I sprayed sulfur to the table grapes for mildew, and no one is to be in the field for 3 days, 24-hour days. And that's all information that is the legal right of any employee to go into a work zone.
Okay.
So much more detail that goes into this, that question. And
Is that something?
Francesca, did you get an email on a written injury, illness, and prevention program?
No, she did not.
Okay. Okay.
She said, oh. Yeah, we were wondering how that's documented.
Sure. So one of the things that we learned from you, Rigo, in the discovery process was that illness prevention program documentation is created in partnership with the insurance company. And so each farm owner would have its own form, right, that is specific to their procedure, because each farm is a little different and whatnot. So with that said, there are templates. I believe OSHA has a template that you can use as a guideline, but know that every farm is going to have its own variation based on the conditions of their crop and whatever, location, geography, like just different things.
Yeah, or specific job. If they're using sharp tools, shorthanded tools, meaning that they're bent over for large periods of time. In some cases, those are even illegal to use anymore. Also, if they're using ladders that could be 15 feet tall to harvest citrus, or wheelbarrows to bring out pick totes of grapes, so or bags. Everything is very specific to the commodity in agriculture, and also to the industry if they're working on roads or whatever it may be.
Right. So there is no standard form. It is going to be customized to the farm and to their operation. But if you want a template or a general idea, you can look for IPP, or I forget what it's called, form online, and you'll get some of them. I mean, they're not necessarily put out there. It's not public information, but you'll find some that you can use.
Yes, Francesca, if you would like, I'll email you here in the next 10 minutes the Cal OSHA, the one that I would use. Okay. That Cal OSHA's IIPP, and then I'll email you my specific IIPP that is developed for my crop.
Perfect. So what we'll do, we'll post that in the Slack channel for the participants. It'll be in your Slack channel so that you can have access to that as well. Well, probably, yeah, somehow it'll be communicated via the Slack channel.
Thank you. I just had one more quick question. What does the end of the day routine look like? Does the crew manager check in with the workers, or is it kind of seeing like you work this many hours, or are they paid at the end of the day, or like kind of what does the end of the day look like?
Good question. Throughout the day, to monitor the crew, there's breaks in between, and that's a time where the entire crew comes together to either take a water break or a half-hour lunch break, and that is a time when the crew leader is to be engaged and to oversee the health just by eyeball of their crew. If somebody doesn't come out during one of these breaks, the crew leader will go inside if they're in a vineyard or if they're working in some orchard to go find out what that employee is doing. So different procedure with different companies. They need to come out of the vineyard when they work for me. That is a way that they're monitored. Here in California, we're harvesting table grapes, and it could be 100 to 110 degrees sometimes. The temperature will rise. But I generally will start to cut harvest off at 90 degrees. That's pretty hot, considering the working conditions underneath the vineyard could be very. It's a suffocating. The humidity can be very high. So that's another thing I left out. At the end of the day, also is if they are either working hourly or by the piece or piece rate, which means they will harvest or perform a particular task, and they will be paid by the task. In grapes, harvesting a 19-pound and packing a box of grapes could be starting wage could be per piece $2.50. If it's a very good harvest, if it's at a 90%, if the crop's at 90% ready to be harvested, and that all fluctuates. So then the employees will all meet with the crew leader, and they will tally out, and they will sign their card, their punch card, for every piece that they performed. And that information is given to the employee and also to the crew leader for payroll. It just depends on a specific job that they are performing. If they have tools, they have to check them in. They have to tidy up their work area. If they're packing, they can be packing onions and they have to clean up their area. So it really depends on the type of job that they're performing.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my question was, how much are you willing to invest in a product?
That's a great question. But it depends on what product are we speaking of?
So the technology that we're about to offer you,
Okay.
if we have a price range, how much would that be?
Can I help you with that?
Yeah.
Okay. If you are creating a product that's to solve $50 trillion worth of problems, you might be willing to pay $1 billion, right? if you're offering a solution to better cups for drinking water, you might be 75 cents more.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to explain which problem you're trying to solve, and then find out how much he's willing to invest in solving that particular problem.
Okay, so the problem that we are about to solve is the workers' health. So we will get a better way to monitor the temperature, heat exposure,
Yes.
moisture, and also all those things.
I really appreciate this question. So let me try to explain this as best as I can. Number one, the employee health is ultimate here. You don't want anybody to get sick or die on your property. That will open up a whole different can of worms and liabilities for the grower. Also, what will happen to the family and their well-being if one of the primary breadwinners happens to become sick. But and then there again, we are responsible for having to pay disability insurance as well for the employee. But insurance companies that insure they're called workman's compensation insurance, and they give us it's like an auto insurance. They'll give you a premium for your auto insurance, and if you have had multiple accidents, you will have a high auto insurance. And if you have very stellar, zero traffic accidents, no speeding tickets, your premiums will come down. And when you're talking about if you're running a payroll of $2 million and you're having to pay out here in California for workman's compensation insurance, and the premiums change by risk factors by jobs performed. If you're on the ladder and you're harvesting citrus, that premium could be up to 18 to 20% of every dollar that's paid to the individual farm worker. If you're in table grapes, that comes down because of risk. You're on the floor. The risks aren't as high as again working on a ladder, and that could be 9 to 10 to 12% of every dollar that's paid out, and that goes directly to the workman's compensation insurance to cover any injuries, illnesses, or death. So I'm a small farmer, and I run a payroll of excess of $2 million. Then you have some very large companies that employ over 10,000, 15,000 employees a day, harvesting berries, strawberries, grapes, any particular commodity, and you could just imagine the amount of payroll that they're paying. So when you reduce the risk, your premiums will come down after 3 years. If you start off a brand new company, you start off at 100% premium, and if you're proving that you are actively engaged with safety, and right now it's just a repetitive, every morning it's the same thing over and over and over, just repetition on how to take care of yourself, what to look for, what are the cautions, so no one becomes sick, injured, or dies. And if someone does not get ill at a particular price, because workman's compensation insurance has a price for any illness. So if you break an arm, there's a price code for that, and that's insurance standard when who breaks an arm. If in the again throughout 3 years, if you don't have any injuries, you will start coming down from which is called an experience modification If you're paying 100% to start, after 3 years, you will start working down your premium because you aren't a high risk. You could come down to, I have it at one point driven mine down to 64%, which is fabulous because that is saving, number one, lives. If you're on top of your health and safety management, and also dollars back to me as the grower. So investing, how much would I be willing to invest? I would, if there's a safety monitor like what we're talking about that is monitoring real time employees' heart rate and temperature, heart rate really, or levels, or I don't know how you will be able to figure this out. And it will alert me, my crew boss, or someone that I have in place. That instance, I wouldn't mind paying $300 an employee because on the long term, I am saving money. If that apparatus could be used time and time again, if you start thinking about the numbers at what we're saving on the long term average years, I definitely would invest in something that will lower my cost for insurance.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, sir, how you doing?
Good, hi.
All right, so I have a couple questions here. The first one here is going to be about the data service that's available to farm workers. I know they're out on a farm, but just how remote are the farms located, and what does this data service situation look like for workers to use if a software solution was to be implemented for them?
Okay. Right now in rural communities, we are fighting for broadband. There is none. So cellular telephones is basically what the employee uses for data. As a employer, I have just installed on my vineyard, and I'm using it for the precision agriculture in my irrigation. But that router, it's a cell phone router, has a 2-mile radius that it sends out a signal to the different nodes that are in my vineyard. In this particular, I'm trying it out on this one vineyard, this new technology. But the same idea could be used if we are using some sort of a device on the employees that the router would be picking up that device or that node per employee. So there is technology. It's not the best because we are using cellular, and there is some areas where cellular just does not work. We have some growers in New Mexico through the National Latino Farmers and Ranchers Association that they have to drive miles just to use their cell phones. So there is some issues there, but for the most part, cellular is the data that's used to collect data.
So at the very least, in worst case scenario, would workers be able to text at the very least at any point in the farm?
Oh yeah, I've been asked this question several times. I would say over 90% of all employees, field workers, use cellular phones.
Okay. But data service itself is scarce. Okay.
Yes.
If a service was to be implemented that workers can install on the personal apps, I know privacy is a big concern because of document status and just general uneasiness with having something that could sort of maybe track them, and they may be wary of that sort of solution. But if privacy concerns were addressed, would they be receptible to using an app that could be installed on their personal phone if there was a guarantee that it wouldn't be used to be tracking them?
Are you asking if an employee would want to download an app on their own phone to monitor themselves?
Not as a monitoring tool, as a data collection, like just did you take your break, would be pretty much the extent of the feedback from their phone to collect that data, not to monitor their movement or anything.
Okay. Then I understand I think I understand where you're going with this. And I don't think that is the right approach, because we have to enforce that employees take their breaks. If it's left to them, the employees, to take a break, the majority will not take a break if they're working doing piece rates. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So for me to tell an employee, you have to download this on your phone, that won't fly. I have to provide it for them.
Okay, well, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Hi. So my question is, in what ways is water available to workers out in the field?
Readily available. Legally, they have to have cold water, and that's questionable depending on the time of year as well, but readily available. So, and it can't be any farther than a quarter mile away.
Okay, so do they have like stations, or like do you give them water bottles?
Yeah, there is. That's another good point. So, for every 20 employees, there has to be, if you have, for instance, 5 women and 15 men, there has to be 2 porta pots. If you have one, well, I'm not going to get into all the detail, but there's a men and women's portable toilets. There's also that have to be cleaned on a regular basis. That's all written, so if an inspector comes, they're able to track when they're being serviced. Also, shade needs to be available, and it can't be the shade of a tree or a vine. It has to be a tent, one of these shade that you would see at the parks, at the soccer games. So if you have 20 employees, you're better off to have about 3 of these 8x8 tents, just to make sure that everybody at one given time could sit down and sit in some sort of shade. Also, water with ice is given with disposable cups, one-time use only. Clean hand washing stations with clean water, soap, and single-use towels.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Sorry. Okay. Hello to you too. So I have a quick question. What's currently implemented in the fields for labor route optimization? So a laborer gets a task finished, right? And then you want to optimize how that task is completed every time. Currently, what's being utilized in the fields to optimize that time?
Just experience and What I will do is I'll perform a task myself if it's pruning vines, or if it's packing table grapes. I'm able to visualize a field of grapes, determine what the percentage is of color, and the crop that's ready for harvest, and make an estimate on how many boxes can be performed by the hour if they're being paid by the hour.
Okay. So you, as the farm owner, are definitely in charge of the quantifying task accomplishment?
Setting the scale, yes. And it could be a sliding scale, but yes, or I will. It depends on what the particular. If I'm in the area, or if not, or I will send a crew boss in to do an average of what particular job needs to be performed, and they'll take 20 or 30 minutes, and I'll average it out, and I'll say they can do. I think that they should be able to do about 30 vines today, or they can do 5 vines an hour if they're pulling leaves. So you're working with
Okay.
you can't really put a metric system to nature.
Right. So it kind of leads me into my last question. Is currently your logging data, when I say data, this could be anything, right? This could be your laborers' hours, your own kind of collection of the accomplishments that your laborers are getting through each day, each week, each month. What are you currently using as a platform for that specifically?
It's a software called Data Tech. It's an accounting software for payroll and farm management. I could get down to a row and call it a specific row by number or name or code. How many vines are in that row? What commodities down that row? What job needs to be performed? And how long that row took to complete that particular job. That software then is also used for payroll. But back into the field, let's just start from point A. It's all the 100% or close to 100% is all done by sheets. So we'll use employee social security number and their name, but then we give them an employee PIN. So they're really not any particular name. It's just a number that we use for the software. So employee 1512 walked into a vineyard, which is a class code that needs to be allocated for insurance. That will also, the software in the accounting also pays out the insurance value for that particular job, how many hours or pieces that employee worked, and their compensation. It also takes in all the employee taxes from FUTA, FICA, SDIC, EDD, which is unemployment insurance tax in California. You name it. Even employer taxes are all calculated there and paid out accordingly.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello. My question is, do you currently have anything that takes moisture and temperature readings out on the farm?
Yes, temperature, yes, and that is all part of the router that I installed, and I use that. Well, I'm going to use it for multiple purposes now, but that system is set up for my drip irrigation system, and but the same system is used. I can go on my cell phone here, my smartphone, open up my a particular vineyard and look at the temperature of that vineyard right now, real time. There is moisture sensors. I just don't have those. I didn't pay for that service, for the humidity level in the air, etc. No, there is that technology, but I haven't paid for that.
Okay, so it is
Yes,
available.
there is.
Okay.
Yes.
And my second question is, what kind of things does OSHA check for when they pay a visit to the farm?
The very first thing they go to is they look for the employer's name, general information, cell phone number of the employer, address of office. So that's the first thing they start monitoring. They start, looking for. Then, since I'm not a Cal OSHA, what I've just observed, and then they'll start going straight to the portable toilets, opening them up, checking for clean water, for hand washing stations, looking in at the service records that are stickered on the outside of the last the service of that portable pot. Then they start looking for water containers, how it is that where they are, how far away from the crew is the portable toilets, the water, is there shade made available to them, and then after they do a general go through, well, let me back up. They have to announce themselves, report directly to the person in charge. If it's a crew leader or the grower, they will ask. We're from Cal OSHA. They introduce themselves, identify themselves, and then they ask who's in charge. After that, then they go in and start doing their inspection. From there, they go into the work zone and they start asking. They will go and speak to the employees. They'll ask for their name and what is it that they're doing. They'll if they've taken breaks, how they're being paid. Just numerous questions that they ask. Is there anything that you would like to say to us? Is there anything that is of concern to you? They ask the employee. Just kind of basic information. I don't know what their SOP is, but just from what I've observed, that's what it is. Another one real important question is, when was the last time that was sprayed? And they will ask the employees, were you told what was sprayed and when it was sprayed? If they say no, that employer or that farm has a lot more questions to answer from that point out.
So you previously mentioned that you already had an app that collected data by the vineyard, right? You installed these routers, right? Is that information real time? Like, is it when you
yes.
look at it, is it an estimate of over the time? I don't know, say a week estimate of, and it averages out the data, or is it real?
It's by the hour, or I can customize it by the minute. If you go to the local weather stations that are around, those are by I don't know if they go by an hour or over, but mine is very precise, very detailed.
Okay, and you have used this to make real-time decisions as to.
I've just this technology has just been installed last week, and I
Oh.
just did a training on it yesterday.
Nice.
But yes, I can make for regulation, and I am ahead of the curve because there will be regulation in California and eventually through the U.S. on groundwater contamination. My root zone is 40 inches down. Water that I'm irrigating passes my 40 inches, then typically, depending on the soil type, then typically that's just percolating straight into the groundwater. So then I know when to stop. That system, I'll be able to start programming my pumps to shut off by the temperature of that day. If it gets to 110 degrees, I could customize it for myself where I'm not over irrigating using energy that I don't need to, and also be preparing myself to be regulation that's coming in where I could prove to any agency monitoring my ground water contamination, and here's my proof. So I'm doing this now because we as growers foresee that we will be somehow by penalties, monetary penalties for contamination of groundwater.
Is there any more things that you foresee aside, of course, from the personal health of the farm worker? Is there any more issues of the farm?
Outside of personal health for farm worker, yes. Well, we could go on for a while. There's, just so much.
Maybe the top one, aside from the water.
Yeah. Also, pollutants into the air.
Okay.
And already seeing how this is going to take place. So, for instance, depending on which region you're in, let's say Napa, the famous Napa County, high vineyard, that's commodity. They make wine. If they have a foggy day, and I know this because I used to manage a vineyard up in Napa. So if it's a foggy morning, then that later that day we would send out sulfur dusters to go out and put pounds per acre of sulfur. So you're blowing sulfur in the air, and sulfur. I don't know if there's an inversion layer, and when you blow sulfur, it will just kind of hang, and you could see it just kind of hanging on the valley floor for hours. And as a grower, you like to see that because you know that product's working. As a parent who has a child who has asthma, you don't like to see that because then your child shouldn't be going outside. That's going to be coming in. Here in San Joaquin, we have the Clean Air Board. We can't burn if we're going to redevelop a orchard or a vineyard, if you're in a certain acreage, a grower of 200 acres or more, you can't burn anymore. You have to chip all your wood. You have to chip it, and it's hauled out, and that product's used for gardens or burn or these energy. Well, they'll burn for energy. Also, there's just so many, and I can go on and on about this, but for now, let's just use that.
Yeah. This is really good information. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes.
I had one more question. What kind of record is kept by the farm when a complaint is reported, and what actions are taken by the farm owner or the crew lead to avoid future events?
If it is a major accident, by law, you have to report it immediately. To have a death, that is right away. You have to report that death or a particular injury to OSHA. If it's a strain, back sprain, if they feel sick to their stomach, if there's like a heat illness, you have to monitor that down. You have to take the information from the employee, what the illness may be or injury, and then to provide your employee medical care and attention. And you have to provide it, you have to make it available to them. If it's not ambulance 911 coming out and responding and taking them to an emergency room, you could ask if they drove with someone and what they would rather do. Would they like to go to the doctor now? Would they like to go tomorrow? How is it that they would like to do? I prefer as it happens because that helps me with my workman's compensation insurance. If I provide right away medical, but you have to legally the injuries. If it's a first aid, you have to report it, but you can pay out of pocket first aid.
Right.
If we can get into a whole other area that could be, there's a lot of fraud and illegal activity that happens just because we're talking about, and people think that they're going to get away with doing some illegal activity. Ultimately, they get found out. The employee will go and speak out that they weren't giving the proper attention.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Hi, Rigo. Hi, Rudy. My name is Gerardo. I'm proud to say that I'm from the Santa Maria Valley in California. And I want to point out a fact, an issue. There are many workers trying to earn more, and they might actually encourage the employer to continue working despite harsh weather conditions. What do you do as a vineyard owner, a farmer's advocate?
Those, I mean, they should be, they shouldn't be doing that. They're just, number one, trying to force someone to perform a job when they don't have to. Legally, they don't have to do anything that they do not want to do. So if I have a crew leader, in the employee handbooks, every employee that's hired with me gets an employee handbook, and there's a phone number that they can call to complain about a particular crew leader, because even in that area, there is abuse. And because maybe that crew leader is getting paid as well an incentive by the pieces or job performed, I understand what you're saying. They will force them to stay because there's an incentive for them. Or that grower, because he's dealing with the perishable commodity.
Right.
He can't force them to do anything that they do not want to. In this day and age, especially in Santa Maria, I'm surprised that that's going on because of the Urban League or the UFW or so much other advocate groups that are watchdogs, and they will monitor, they will drive around and they will put out information on la radio, bilingue. There's so much information, but on my employee handbook, call it in. If you're being harassed, sexually, if you're being bullied, if that leader is, it could be anything. There's a phone number that they can call, and that person will be.
Yes, but my question was on the employer side. If the employer, the farmer, the picker, not the farmer, the picker, the one that is picking strawberries,
Okay,
for example, the picker wants to make more money. He is the one trying to convince the crew leader, let's continue working for another hour to make that extra $11, $12.
Thank you. And you understand.
Uh-oh.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here still.
Okay. Yeah, you understand that question about in some instances you can't. It's hard. Force the employee to come out and take a break when they're on break. There is basically a head count, and the crew leader has to go in and tell them to come out. They just have to stop. And this apparatus would be a great tool to be able to monitor that employee has actually came out to the break area. Because sometimes, in some cases, the crew has left, and you still have somebody there picking mandarins because they're making $60 a bin, and that's a lot of money to these people.
Right.
And you know, it's the crew leader checks out the time of every individual that leaves. If there's one that's still in there harvesting, he has to go in and pull them out. If he doesn't want to come out, he's basically told, hey, we're done. And if you don't stop, you can't come back tomorrow.
Right. Well, that's kind of like the dilemma, though, because many workers, we're planning to do something to benefit them ultimately. And I agree that their health ultimately is one of the most important things. However, in the design process of this technology, I wouldn't want to design something that might actually hurt them in a way. And what I mean by hurt them is by actually creating an excuse for the employer to fire them, or if they want to make those extra hours, but this device or technology would not allow them to do so, then they are probably not going to be receptible to this technology.
Look, there has to be rules in everything that we do. And if you tell the employee we're only working for 8 hours today, we're only working for 8 hours. When you say that, employees will leave and they want to go look where there's 10-hour days. Does that make sense?
Yes.
They have the right to leave. Okay. No one is holding them to do something that they do not want to do. On the contrary, they do want to stick around longer because they are being paid by the piece. And you do have to go in there and say, you have to come out. You can't be doing this. You're the only one here. No one's going to be responsible for you. You need to stop. And how are you going to do this? I think by this apparatus is a great way to monitor fulano de tal is still in the field and he refuses to come out or she refuses to come out. You need to come out. These are the rules. This is what to the field in Santa Maria, Salinas, anywhere you go, there are binders, posters, and it says we're going to work 8 hours, and this is the piece rate, and this is the minimum wage. They know it. They see it. They are signing on to something. After that, then if they're not listening to the employer, then they should be fired.
So then, keeping that in mind, that last thought that you said, do you think that would be more receptible for them, or would they actually be like a backfire?
For their own health. For their own health, and safety, it's something that they should consider. Because, again, I have had occasions when some people are working and it's over 100 degrees and they refuse to come out.
Right.
Back tomorrow morning when it's cool and come back and work, and they refuse to come out because, hey, today, at this job that I'm performing today, I'm going to make $250 and I'm going to hit it and I'm going to work very hard. They're beyond sweating anymore. They even have stopped perspiration. And you need to tell them, you need to stop. You need to get out. We're done. And they will refuse that.
Right.
They will take Red Bulls, and they are just pushing it as hard as they possibly can. And no one, under any circumstances, should be doing that.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
We have about 5 more minutes. That might be 1 or 2 more questions. So if your team has something, okay, come up.
Francesca, this is Rudy.
Oh, I'm hearing voices. Hi, Rudy.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I emphasize the fact that this is California centric, as a result of all the has been done by the United Farm Workers Union and other farm worker concerned organizations, and the rules have. California is light years ahead of any other state or region with regard to the safety and health of the farm worker.
Absolutely.
And also making sure that the employers such as farm owners like few and far between, and we want to ensure that there's equity, there's fairness and justice to all concerned that are involved in this, in the agriculture, farming and ranching arena. And that's why he's our business development person, and we want to make sure that in terms of his own farm, and he comes from a farm worker, he has that experience. So we want to make sure, but I just wanted to emphasize in terms of this is California driven, and that's the kind of the best that there is in terms of.
Yeah, no, thank you for adding that, Rudy. I'm gonna rephrase that and say that one of the reasons we're using the standards or the feedback that we get from Rigo, he's in Fresno, California. California is one of the states that has the most the tougher laws. And so
regulated.
Yeah, it's more regulated. And so if it works in California, chances are that it would work in other states. So California is sort of a standard.
Again, Francesca and Rudy, I want to reiterate what Rudy was kind of saying. These regulations are because of the good works that the UFW, Urban League, and other farm worker advocacy groups have done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was going to add to that as well, that Rudy might seem silent in this presentation, but that's because a lot of Rudy's work is actually in advocacy and policy in DC. So Rigo does a lot of business management, but Rudy is the president of the organization, and he does a lot of advocacy, so he would know more about that. So our last team, if you can come up for.
My father was a bracero. I'm first generation born here. I've worked in the fields, and I am just responding to what I wouldn't want my mother to be doing, my sister to be doing, or a brother to be doing. The way I think is that person is like my father, like my mother, and by just putting some rules down, it's benefiting everybody.
That makes me want to give you a hug. You're so far. So team, come on. You got this.
Hello, everybody. So one of the kind of like recap questions that I had for you guys. So we're building like a software for you guys. Are you guys looking more not mobile based? Like we would have to install, like you said, you wouldn't want it to install software on an application based, like telephone. You would want some kind of like device or platform.
Unless another thought would come out, but the way I had envisioned it is if it's like a Fitbit that's just, even if it's just monitoring the heart rate of any particular employee, when you strain your back, you create stress in your body and your heart rate goes up. If you're hitting heat exhaustion, your heart rate elevates. It just depends. Also, another thing that happens in the fields that we need to shine light on is there's drug abuse. Sometimes when employees will come in either drunk or hungover, that is a heart rate, or they are using either some methamphetamine. Not everybody. This is a very small case, but those sometimes are those are like concerns, because we can only visualize what's happening within that individual, but we can't see internally or what's really happening, other than if we're able to go up and just test their pulse.
Right. So with that being said, you're not like totally against building like a platform on a mobile device where we could integrate an application with a wearable device?
That would be awesome if I could be anywhere, and this wearable device hits a certain threshold of a heartbeat. Something's happening with employee 2516 at location, my vineyard over on Tulare County, and it monitors me and the field supervisor, crew leader, where we can also respond to 911 because of the location that it is. It's able to, I can send a map to the ambulance to say, because sometimes I'll say this in Spanish and I'll translate. Sometimes the way that the farms are located is le das derecho en el naranjito, le das mano derecha.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where the location is to the farm. So to get that out from the employee, well, where's that at? You take a right after.
Yeah, we need physical locations. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right, okay. But if you have a GPS location, exactly where that employee is in the field, they know how to get to them.
Yeah, perfect. All right, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Rudy and Rigo, a million thanks for your time. It's been several months now of collaborating, and so we're getting to see the end result here, the end product. So thank you again. We're gonna cut it off here because we have to set up for lunch, and we have another panel coming on later. But again, thank you. We're going to be in communication. Maybe if they have additional questions, they can email. We'll figure something out so that they can continue to reach out to you. But
let me say, thank you. Let me say.
What?
That this society is getting involved in this. The Latino community is the fastest growing new farmers in the U.S., where everyone else is selling their ranches, getting away from farming. The Latino community is the fastest growing. So I'm excited to see that industry is getting involved in this. And check us out on National Latinos Farmers and Ranchers. Support your local growers, and fight big agriculture.
Así sea. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank everybody that's there. Have a great conference.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Suerte.